Live from our studios on Kairaba Avenue. Good evening, viewers, from wherever you're watching us from. It's good to be back, especially on this Youth Dialogue, to yet another interesting, educative and interesting, and this one, it's going to be so interactive, trust me if I tell you that. And we are going to talk about, I have two vibrant young people. I'm not sure if the other one, it's not too young. But yeah, I have two vibrant young people here who are contributing so much towards climate change, who are doing so much towards youth activities, and who are doing a lot when it comes to awareness creation, because the environment is where we live in and we really have to take care of it. If we don't take care of the environment will one way or the other take care of us. So it's better for us to take care of the environment. So we are going to talk about anything that has to do with COP30. As you know, I was in Brazil, Belém, together with these outstanding young people, and we're going to talk about the activities or the initiatives that, you know, took place as far as COP30 is concerned. And to, you know, joining me to discuss this and others, I have here Khadija Tusise, who is the lead coordinator of ELCOI The Gambia. Good evening, Khadija. Thank you for coming. You're welcome. And I have here Babu Karinyang, who is the acting regional coordinator, Climate Action Network Africa, Can Africa. And our not so young youth.
Thank
Good
you,
evening.
Julie. Yeah, disclaimer, I'm not a youth and I told you I should not have been here.
Yo, Babu Kar, youth man,
yeah, I'm a young person, but I'm not a youth by the definition. I'm not. So. But I'm happy to be here anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. So I'm going to start with Khadija. To the build up to COP30, we've seen that you've been engaging in a lot of activities here in the Gambia before actually going to Brazil. And we've seen that over the years you have been really played a very important role as far as young people are concerned in terms of climate change, creating awareness and ensuring that, you know, the voices of young people are heard not just in the Gambia but at the global stage. Talk to us about your activities.
Okay. Good evening, viewers. I am Khadija Sise, the lead coordinator of the Local Conference of Youth on Climate Change, and it's a pleasure to be here once again. And thank you, Julde, for hosting us today. Regarding the climate change activities, like, it's been huge. Like, I did environmental science on my BSc, but ranging from that, like, we've done a lot of climate change activities on the ground. Yeah. So regarding the underground activities that we've been doing before the Conference of Parties, that is a COP, and under the Gambia Environmental Alliance, we all know as the main umbrella body for all civil society organizations regarding the issues of climate change in the Gambia. And through that, we are able to host what we call the Local Conference of Youth on Climate Change, that we all know it as ELCOI. So it's one of the largest youth climate convergence in the Gambia, bringing diverse young people together to be able to share their ideas, thoughts, and expertise regarding these issues of climate change, especially on their vulnerability aspect in their various communities. So for the past 2 years, we have seen how successful the ELCOI has been, and it has served as a success story, not only in the Gambia, but also at the global stage. So looking at it, the biggest output of the ELCOI, it's the National Youth Statement. So this youth statement, it's where captures the voices of young people, not only their vulnerabilities or their recommendations, but the policy demand that has to be included in our national climate change priorities. Because like you mentioned, we've been going to the Conference of Parties annually, but how can young people also have a decision in the policy? So let's say for this year, the 2025 outcome of the ELCOI, we have like almost like 4 overarching demands. The development of a national climate youth fund that we've presented to the government to at least include them in their climate change bill. And you've realized that almost 20% of that outcome has been for young people regarding the issues of climate change. And this year, for the first time ever also, through the government of the Gambia, Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources, through their project, West Africa Coastal Areas Resilient Project, WACA project in the Gambia, and looking at the outcome of our ELCOI, National Youth Statement, they were able to meet our demands by supporting at least 3 young people to the Conference of Parties. So, and looking at that outcome, even there was a pledge from the Office of the Vice President. You realize that the Vice President was also on the ground during the main ELCOI conference. So this has something that Gambian young people have shaped the ground already. Like, we've shown that the commitment is there, and through unilateral discussions we've been able to push forward with the government. Sometimes it's actually important because they are the policy implementers, and we cannot go without them. So how do we ensure that our climate change priorities are actually included into their climate demands?
That's a loaded one. So Babukar, you've also been very instrumental as far as climate change is concerned, and raising awareness and youth activities. Talk to us about your engagement in the Gambia, but also at the regional level.
Yeah, so thank you very much, and I think it's a pleasure to be here with my boss, Khadijatu. You know, she's the boss, and then of course, she has done a very good job in COP, and then we've seen her engagement both in the plenary and then in all the activities that they've been involved, and we are very proud of them as young people of this country, trying to push that agenda from the local to the international level. So for us, we are a continental group, and it's a civil society organization with over 200 members, and you know, all those members form each a working group. Like, the members are the network who forms the organization, and at the end of the day, what we do policy advocacy, we do campaigns, and of course we do also activities that are geared towards raising awareness. But again, in our thematic areas, in the advocacy, in the campaigns, and in the policy, both of them, what we do is we use a strategy in doing each of them. Like, for example, in COP30 this time, us as an organization, we went with what we call an escalation. And the escalation was a just transition program. In the just transition program, what our escalation for this year was called the BAM, that is the Balance Action Mechanism. So this was a mechanism that was out of the convention, to say that, guys, come on, you know, this convention has some things that is not incorporating the needs of what is the reality now. For example, in the Just Transition Work Program, we talked about communities, we talked about labor, that is the workers, the right of workers, among other things, which of course, if you look at it, the definitions might not be well defined in the convention. So what we did was, as a network, we do what we call an escalation program. And the escalation program is going towards COP, what do we want our message to be? And that was on just transition. So in this message of just transition, we all know that this is a party-driven process. And us as observers, we are just people who goes as a privilege to be part of this process and also look at things and see how they're working. So the first thing that we do is to start lobbying with the people that has voices, and these are the people who are the parties. And when I say parties, it's the government, like Khadija says, they are the people who own this process, because the UNFCCC process is a party-driven process. And the party-driven process means it's the parties that decides on things that affect them. They're the one who negotiates, they're the one who goes into bilateral agreement and other things that are within this convention. So what we do as civil society is also to lobby, advocate, and not only that, but also to influence. You will realize that some of the times you see us doing protests, isn't it? You will see us sometimes, you see us making noise there. You will see us sometimes calling out countries. For example, there were many times that we start calling countries who were blocking negotiations on loss and damage. We were calling out countries who were blocking negotiations on the adaptation finance, among other things. So our role as observers, our role as civil societies in these processes is to ensure that those parties who own this process deliver to the needs of the people, because they cannot also be left unchecked. They cannot be left unaccountable. So that was the root, that was the whole essence of having observers who are there, not only disruptive again, but also providing solution, because the Balance Action Mechanism came from the civil society and the labor movement. And we have seen how that was embraced, and at least it was the biggest win of COP30. And we have also seen how definitely our own people, G77 plus China, how they embrace it and how it definitely went well.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a lot of activities going on, young people there, climate advocates, they are pushing. And we've seen that this COP is particularly interesting for the fact that it was held in the Amazon. And one would have thought that, okay, this was going to be the turning point as far as COPs are concerned. But again, after the outcome, a lot of people came out, you know, to actually say what they felt, and you know, some of them expressed disappointment. Some of them thought that, okay, this was supposed to be a game changer. But again, people have their own perspective. But as far as young people are concerned, you did mention that prior to going, you did submit a statement to the ministry. So what were the key concerns of Gambian young people as far as climate change is concerned?
Yeah, so like Babukar was just mentioning,
yes.
like COP, if you look at it, it's like a continuous process.
Right.
And same with the ELCOI also. Like we've started the ELCOI in 2022 and now currently it's 4 years. So meaning it's a continuous process until all our demands are actually reflected in our national climate change priorities. So for instance, if you look at the Gambia, like Babukar mentioned, parties are the ones who actually tend to push forward with the decisions. At a country specific, before a country goes, you will have to know your negotiation block, or what is Gambia's position regarding the vulnerability, or what do they actually need to do when they reach to the conference of parties. So that is where the challenge of young people comes in, because like observers are there in the conference of parties, likewise the young people. He made mention that many people will be there to be doing protests, and young people are also there, not only serving as observers, but that is why it's key component for young people also to be having party badge. And we acknowledge that from the government of the Gambia, at least for the past years now, we've been actually getting a party badge. At least that will be able to influence decisions. So in true that, looking at the national development, the national youth statement, you will realize that there are a lot of overarching demands ranging from the adaptation negotiations, the loss and damage, ozone and marine, and also even the waste management sectors. So there are a lot of sectors regarding each domain that you are doing. Equally from the just transition that Babukar was mentioning, agriculture and food security, these are all vulnerabilities that Gambian young people are also facing. So how can their demand, or how can they be included in any of the climate financing processes? That is going to be an outcome for the conference of parties. So when we go to the global level, that is where the decision lies in. Like you mentioned, the COP30, it's been already 3 decades. That is over 30 years now since the Paris Agreement has been hosting this conference of parties. But what has been the outcome? The outcome has always been a political momentum for many young people, especially we, because currently we are speaking on behalf of the other generations that are even yet to be here. If you look at the outcome of the conference of parties, the COP30, the pledges are mostly talking about a pledge to by 2035. How old are we going to be by then? If you add 20, right now we are in 2025, adding 10 years to it, like we are almost out of the youth stage. So these are the challenges that young people also face. So that is why it's always important, and we've been advocating for that. Young people are not only going to COP to just be observers or to be listening, but they also have key component to it. That is where we have the YONGO, the Official Children and Youth Constituency to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. They are the ones actually aligning ourselves to be hosting this local conference of youth. This year we have like 110 ELCOIs across the globe. So how do we also push it? And the COP30 also serves as the cup of truth and the cup of implementation. You realize the COP presidency, through their Portuguese, Brazilian accent, they will say a mutirao decision. Like it's like a collective effort to ensure that we actually come in with a decision. But guess what? Like it wasn't actually a collective effort, because a COP without a fossil fuel inclusion in the decision text, it's not a collective mutirao. And even for the global youth statement that we are kindly advocating for, where I even did the opening statement.
Plenary. You know, a Gambian, oh my God, let's clap for her.
So you realize that there has been a lot of things young people have done this year, especially for the Gambian young people. We've been doing massively regarding on the ground. So like, it's actually important. So with the Global Youth Statement, we delivered a statement at the right opening, to at least, because that is where you have all the parties, the COP presidency and also the co-facilitators and the chair, to ensure that they actually do fair, equity and fossil fuel phase out for the past 2 weeks of the Conference of Parties. That is why we've been advocating for it, we've been speaking for it, ensuring that this decision is there. And at the final outcome, even the Global Youth Statement, under the final Muturao decision, under the COP presidents, there was no text that even has to mention the Global Youth Statement. And this was what's supposed to be pushed by the parties. Fortunately for the Gambia, we had discussion with the DPS and other sectors. But like there are some bilateral meetings that negotiators, it's only lead negotiators or high core facilitators will have access to that. So when tensions come like that, that is the time that you know that your country's head of delegation is really important. Because that is the time that the ministers also play a key role. You will even realize that this year our minister was appointed as a co-facilitator to the Global Goal on Adaptation. That way, meaning there has been a tension for almost 2 weeks without the outcome of substantive on the Global Goal on Adaptation. So if those political arena is there, how do young people or how do negotiators also come together to push forward to ensure that this decision has been there? And young people have also tried regarding that aspect to have the Global Youth Statement part of the final Muturao decision, but not only with that, there was no fossil fuel phase out. Likewise with the Global Youth Statement. But like COP is a continuous process. We continue to advocate until the demands of young people are actually met as well.
So Baboucarr, you heard what Khadija said. You as someone, not just as a climate advocate, but again, you were there as an observer. Talk to us about what were some of your expectations and how do you see overall COP30?
I will start where Khadija really stops, and that is the phase out of fossil fuel not in there. You see, and that's why I keep on saying, and not only with me, but even, you know, Khadija and our team are the Yongo. We are the Engo. We are the one responsible for the NGOs in this space as well. And our position has always been there should and must be reforms in the UNFCCC process. Because we cannot have a system, that is diluted with people who are lobbyists, who are fossil fuel lobbyists, people whose interest is for investments, whose interest is for profit and not people, to be in this space where it's supposed to be a negotiation to save a planet. It's not possible. Like, it is diluted. The space is so diluted in a way that
double standards.
Exactly, and then the two-tongue whatever is definitely in this process of this space. And this year alone, we have 1,500 fossil fuel lobbyists within the space of the UNFCCC, and Bloomberg and even other big newspapers have even wrote on those things, telling you that the people who are within the system are also the people who don't want this negotiation to go the way that it should be. Imagine having a cup of truth, the material cup where, you know, Brazilians were thinking that this is going to be the turning point, and a text on fossil fuel phase out is not even there talking about it. And we have known the countries, we have seen them, we've mentioned their names, we have even given them fossils of the day.
That fossil of the day.
Saying, calling them out to say that, guys, European Union, UK, Australia, and Canada, you are the countries that are blocking the negotiations on these things. And it is high time that we start talking about the truth in these processes. And then, since this was the cup of truth which we have missed, of course, it is still a process, like Khadija to say, and we are still going ahead with that. Because even the extension of the GAs to 2035 was even showing a not goodwill from these parties. Because if there was a very goodwill, they should have just said, the money is here, we are putting the money, finance to support those who are vulnerable. Because we all know that those in the global south are so vulnerable to climate change. It is affecting us. We have seen the droughts. We have seen the soil intrusion in our communities. We have seen how, you know, right now today, there is a big earthquake in Sri Lanka as a global south country who are suffering most on climate calamities. So these are the things that we need to think about in this process to ensure that those things that are in those negotiations that we are doing are definitely reflecting the realities of what the people on the ground wants. Because we cannot have a COP and continue going to this process every time. The complaint is we don't have funds, we don't have money. But like I keep on saying, these people have money to transform or change one system to another. They will tell you that we don't have the money to give into climate change, like we put in climate finance, as we've been saying in Article 9.1, that the thing is they're obliged to pay. It is the responsibilities of the developed countries to also support the developing nations by giving them monies to adapt to climate change and give them financing that will support climate finance and whatever. But they will be coming out here to tell us that, unfortunately, we don't have funds. But we are saying that it's the same people who are also taking these monies to finance and fund wars. That one bomb costs over millions. One atomic whatever comes thousands of dollars. And those thousands of dollars are having destructions that have impact on the life of the people. For example, if you're having a bomb thrown in a community, the ecosystem will be destroyed in that community. They will not be able to do agricultural products. They will not be able to do things. And what that means is they're going to lose livelihood. Nutrition will also be happening. And we've seen it in communities, in countries where wars happening, like for example in Gaza and other things. Those people could not do any agricultural thing. Gaza, who were known to be typical farmers of olive oil, could not go to their farm to do olive oil farming as a result of the war that is happening. And it's created by us. So if they can do those funding to fund wars, why can't they do funding to give us climate reparation or climate debt that they owe? Oh, thank God this year we've had our, like Khadija said, our Honorable Minister was appointed as the chair for the GGA, and you see us go and appreciated that and applauded her and congratulated her on that thing, which was very good. And our position there was also support her to put Africa's position to that high level, to say, guys, come on, you see, we have been tired of coming to this space and talking only. What we need now is the real money to put on the table, to give us money to adapt to the climate change and calamities that they've caused for us.
That's right. So Khadija, you were also keenly onto negotiations, especially on adaptation. Talk to us, what were the key issues that arise in that negotiation, and what were the stumbling blocks?
So like you mentioned, I have been keenly following adaptation negotiation for the past years with the lead negotiator, Dr. Damfa. So if you look at the adaptation, there used to be three components. That is the Global Goal on Adaptation, the National Adaptation Plan, and the Adaptation Committee. But like this year, the center was focused mainly on the Global Goal on Adaptation, because the outcome of the National Adaptation Plan was going fine until the later end, like the decisions were not actually as adopted as we wanted it. But for the Global Goal on Adaptation, on the decision 1 CMA 5, if you look into those texts, for the past 2 years, there have been experts actually selected to work on indicators, and the overall indicators were more than 100. So, but last year, if you look at COP29, like it was like almost 100 indicators are to be something that has to be selected. But the overall outcome of the indicators for this year, after the COP presidency, this is an outcome of the Global Mutirao, was only 59 indicators. And those 59 indicators are onto thematic sectors. Those focuses on ranging from technology transfer, capacity building, and also how to triple adaptation financing. And the other sectors where this financing has to come from is the water scarcity and resilience, food insecurity, and you will also have the climate health, because we realize that climate health impact has also been affecting the lives and livelihoods. How can we also promote the livelihood of people and reduce the vulnerability aspect? So the overall outcome of adaptation decision for COP30 actually was like a pledge from last year. During the COP29, there was a pledge for $300 billion goal by 2035. So within that 300 billion, that is for the overall climate financing. And the anticipated pledge supposed to have been 1.3 trillion by 2025. 2035. So that is not even quarter of what we're supposed to expect, especially from an LDC country, that is the least developed country, and the Africa Group of Negotiation. So within this outcome of the adaptation, the pledge now currently, according to the Global Mutirao decision from the COP presidency, there's currently $120 billion pledge.
From 300?
Yeah, the 300 is the overall climate finance for the 1.3 way forward trillion. So like we still haven't reached quarter of the 1.3 trillion for the overall climate financing. So, but the 300 billion that has already been pledged from last year COP, so out of that 300 billion, $120 billion will be on the adaptation financing. Because like if you look at the least developed countries and also the African group, adaptation has also been a key priority, likewise mitigation for other countries.
Right.
So because we've not been emitting much, so much that we are doing, but like it's not, if you look at the entire Africa continent, it's less than 0.03 cumulative. So the priorities mainly focuses on adaptation priorities. So that is why we've been pushing for tripling of adaptation financing, and that has been actually one of the biggest plus for the outcome of the global goal on adaptation, even though that the indicators were not much, and they have to be doing another expert training or expert sector regarding those indicators. Because 59 out of 100, it's something that, meaning what the expert has worked for past 2 years, there can be another 2 years to continue regarding those decisions. So with the tripling of adaptation negotiation as an outcome for COP30, at least it's something that we can say it's a plus for the LDC countries and the African group of negotiation. By that, we'll be able to focus more on the vulnerability aspect. And that way you'll be able to also understand the resilience and also how can we triple this adaptation financing. And if we are to do that, no one should be left behind. When we talk about the vulnerabilities, women and children, young people should also not be left behind in terms of those vulnerability financing. If you look at the Global Youth Statement, that was why we called for an indicator for child fair indicators, so that they will also be included in any of the adaptation priority demands that's supposed to be committed at the national climate priorities. Yeah.
But Baboucarr, looking at what Khadija said on adaptation finance, the goal was tripling of adaptation finance, to $1.3 trillion. But again, we've seen that $120 billion it has been pledged. But again, what does this mean for the LDCs? Yeah,
for us, that's why we're saying, and we keep on saying, like Khadija said, the unfairness here. And you see the FFF that you were saying, fairer, feminist, and we even add the feminists in all those F for us. It's this thing that we're talking about. In COP29, we had initiated an NCQG of 1.3 trillion, USD. And in that 1.3 trillion, we had divided into these three. We have said adaptation was going to be 400,000, mitigation was going to be 300,000, loss and damage was going to be 500, and then resilience with the other. So this is what formed the 1.3 trillion that we talked about. So imagine we're talking about 1.3 trillion, and then you just come up with a pledge of 300 billion, not even up to what is needed for adaptation finance. So you see the logic of not even having what is needed. And we are saying it is 3 decades since this process. And it is 10 years since the Paris Agreement. What has changed? What are we talking about? It's simple. And us, this is also where we come with our people in the parties and our governments to say, guys, it's good to have these indicators. But as we're going to have the indicators, let's talk about also financing those indicators. So it goes in tandem. To say that we know that, you see, us as Africans, most of us are going in for adaptation because you see already the realities of climate change is with us. So what we need is, we need the funding, we need the financing to adapt to that realities of what we already have. And to that, what we need is now a political will. We need a commitment. And we were thinking, like you said, in the COP of the truth, we were going to have a truthful COP in the global material and everything that was there, to say that this is the COP that will at least look into the eyes of the Amazonians, the eyes of the people who suffers the most, the eyes of the people whose their land has been seized by water, and everything, the forest is now fading and everything, to say, okay, we are going to triple, we are going to put in more money to ensure that they get. But instead, it's also a COP where we have people who are snitching in. So our demands and calls is a pathway that is fair, a financial pathway that is fair to the people in the global south. Because one, we cannot go in for loans. You cannot tell me, take this loan to adapt on climate change when you have drought. You cannot tell me, take this loan to adapt for climate change when agriculture productivity did not go well. You cannot tell me, take this rule when the river, when the rain delays.
Right.
It's not possible for me to take loan and finance those things. What we are calling for is a grant-based finance that Khadija mentioned. She's a scientist, she mentioned it. Like Africa emit less than 4% of the global emission.
That's
And in that 4% that we emit in this continent, we are now the biggest victim of climate change. Why? Because we are more vulnerable. Imagine today if there is a flash flood, even in our countries, in Gambia and Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, we all lose our houses. Imagine now the high level of sea rise.
Yeah.
Not saying out of any data or so, but the people of Banjul in the next 50 years, where will they find themselves?
Yeah.
Because you see now, and even those people in our coastal lines,
That's right.
look at the roads leading to Gunjur, Katong, and all those. Look at how the change has happened in the coastal line. And this is telling us that visibly in our eyes, there is something that is happening. So how can we now get that financing? Is a grant-based financing,
Right.
where you who pollute and you who are the one having this catastrophe pays back for that. And like I said,
But these are pledges, they're not binding.
so this is what we are saying, and that is why we are calling for a reform in this process, because we cannot have a party-driven process where we have lobbyists who will be coming on the ground to say, okay guys, I think we are also doing this, we have this, and of course, and this is why we are also cautioning our governments that in as much as all these pledges are coming, all these things, there are some of these instruments we need to be very careful in accepting them. Like for example, the so-called carbon credit.
Yes.
You know, for us, we're saying we cannot use a carbon credit as an alternative of financing because it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
You cannot be emitting, destroying everything, coming with your peanut to say an African person, I'm giving you to plant trees, I'm giving you this to make stove, I'm giving. So we also need to be serious as people, as Africans.
So that's where the billion-dollar question is. How do we ensure that there is reform? How does the LDCs go about changing the whole process? How do they go about ensuring that there is change? You know, the process of, okay, negotiations and everything, pledges, you know, they turn pledges from pledges now to real action. Because we've seen that not just this COP, but even the previous COPs, we've seen a lot of pledges, billions and billions. But when you look at the real impact, especially in the African region, it has not been forthcoming.
Yeah, because you see, there's no accountability. For example, so-called mighty America decided not to come. And whose problem? Who is holding them accountable? With all the fossil fuel, the tracking and everything that they're doing. But again, this is a party-driven process. Like I said, us in the civil society can say this, maybe people like Khadijatu cannot, but us who are in the observer knows that we can say, to say that in this party-driven process, there must be transparency. And that is why they have a whole track who looks into transparency in the entire process. Just like see those for adaptation, other one go for mitigation, another one goes to loss and damage. There is a whole component of transparency. Are they looking into the entire process of this thing? Transparency in terms of finance flow, transparency in terms of the process, transparency in terms of, you know, who commits and who says and who does what. Because LDC, ADC, G77 plus China, these are big countries when they come together.
Right.
And when they come together, we've met, I had several meetings with them, talked to them about issues, and felt that, you see guys, they need, and even the material that Khadijatu is talking about, the reform has been said. That there needs to be a reform in the UNFCCC process. And this reform was an agenda pushed by the COP presidency.
Right.
So in that process, it means that going from tokenisms to action has to also come with holding them accountable and also making sure that their pledges and the things that they're talking about are things that are physically on the table.
Do you share the same thoughts?
Yeah.
If as a negotiator you are there, like everything happens in your presence, so talk to us about that.
Yeah, so the reform is actually needful. If you look at the emphasis, that is where even looking at the younger or the UNFCCC, they actually trying to even encourage more of young people. So like for the Gambia, we've seen that Fatih Jeng was one of the UN Youth Secretary General advisors to UN Secretary General.
We're supposed to have her, but due to technical issues, we could not connect
her.
her.
So these are the things that like young people have a say in regarding those things that these UNFCCC decisions are going to take in. And even for this year COP, you've realized that some of our colleagues, like let's say for Muhammad and Aliu and the rest, they were even part of the high-level meeting with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. So you realize that there has been space for young people also, but how can we push forward regarding that? Like, meaning there needs to be a continued support, continuous capacity building, especially for the negotiations. Because like, if you also want to focus more on the technical capacity or the technical aspect of these negotiations, they are very huge. Even I per se, like, you need to read a lot. And also you have to understand the draft text, the decisions, and the CMA, CMP, there is a lot. So at the grassroots level, how can we capacitate ourselves? Okay. So that is where we always try to...
I think that is where the problem lies.
That is why we also talk about in those reform, the knowledge transfer,
technological transfer. If you look for the look at the ACE, that is the Action for Climate Empowerment. It's also a component to where it's actually important to encourage young people per se, because like these decisions already are for, like I mentioned earlier, are for the generations to come, not even us, because like those ones have already failed us. The generations that's supposed to decide for us today had already failed us. So how can we also try to make sure we push forward with a transparency reform, ensuring that there's equity and fairness in everything that we do. So in that process, there needs to be a lot of technical training. There needs to be a lot of technical capacity regarding that. We can advocate for reforms, but if you don't know the guidance or if you don't know the exact thing that what you're supposed to do, there is actually going to be the same process, because the Paris Agreement, we all know it's not binding. So a binding treaty, you cannot sue anyone for that. Like US currently, we've all seen that they back out for the Paris Agreement until now for the next 4 years, but no one will have to do it. But like this, if you look at the issues of climate change, it's about the vulnerability of the world, and to save the planet, it's everyone's responsibility. So we do not have to owe any country, or you do not have to wait for any country to make a decision for you. You know what is affecting yourself, and that is why even if when we are at the global stage, we discuss about our stories. We discuss about the vulnerability that Gambians are facing. Like Babukan mentioned, like for Banjul, in the next 50 years, Banjul might likely be inundated if actions are not taken. So that is why the rising of sea level is actually increasing day in and out. So that is why even if you go around the beaches, you will see that there have been a lot of massive coconut planting, tree plantings, and also even the mangrove restorations. This all serves as a carbon sink to ensure that we contribute to the we contribute to less emission regarding the issues of climate change that we are facing. So the reform has to be more of political aspect, because like there can be a reform, but I know it's going to actually be a time taking, because even if you look at these pledges are not 1 year, 2 years pledges. They are talking about 5 years, 10 years to accumulate like millions or trillions dollars. So it's not a small money. And for the LDCs or the African Group of Negotiation, we do not have all that capacity. We have the resources, but we do not have all the capacity and the technical know-how compared to the developed countries. So you see where the challenge also lies in the capacity or the strength of the least developed countries prior to the global south. The global north, you realize that there is a huge gap. So we need to fix those gaps within ourselves to ensure that we reach to those demands. So anytime that you hear, you will say the global north should be able to pay to the global south, because the global south have not caused the damage. It's the global north that caused the damage. So you see, that is where the challenge comes in. So how do we also push forward to ensure that the global north pays for the damage? You also have what we call the polluter pays principle, the PPPs. But it's not fully binded.
That's the issue. Like you have all these policies, but they're not binded
So
at the end of the day. So that will take us to a commercial break. Babukan, when we return, we will continue the program. Stay tuned.
You know, you can now buy cash power easily by using your QMoney wallet absolutely free, up to $30,000. No meter registration needed. Just dial *323#. Choose option 3, Q Power. Choose option 1 by Q Power. Choose option to enter meter number. Enter your meter number. Enter amount and confirm. That's it. Your Q Power token will be sent instantly via SMS. And guess what? You enjoy free QCell airtime every time you cash in to purchase Q Power. For more information, call 133. Q-Money, Sunya Kape.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, this is the Youth Dialogue coming to you live from our studios on Kairaba Avenue, and I am Jul Denjai, and I have with me Khadijatu Cisse and from Elkhoi, Gambia, and I have also Babu Karinyang from Can Africa. You were talking about something very, very important about the capacity of the LDCs when it comes to negotiations. And not just that again, but aside from the capacity again, because through the process of negotiations, I came across a document where Africa and the LDCs were making some demands. But again, what I've realized in this process is that there was no consensus as far as the LDCs are concerned. For instance, we all want something, but amongst ourselves, we are not agreeing to what we really want.
Yeah, if you look at that thing, so most of the time is the geography and demography.
Right.
That is what causes such type of thing. It's not that they don't agree or they're not willing, but because of priorities.
Yeah.
And that is what Khadija too was trying to say, that at least even before these things,
Right.
that is where now we need to come together. If it is the AGN, Gambia cannot be talking about adaptation with seriousness, and Kenya, for example, comes and talks contrary.
Right.
You know, for instance, you know, or Nigeria or other countries. At least there should be a common position. And that is why we have the negotiators who come together and now have a priority list. And in those priorities, they have a common position. And this is the position that they are taking. And we've seen this year, how the AGN took their position on the fossil fuel. It
was a heated
debate, and they were making points on those things. Now let me give you, for example, in the G77 plus China, there are countries that are there who are at least not in the least developed countries.
Right.
Because imagine now, G77 plus China will now be almost 100 countries. Iran is the chair for G77 plus China. Now, if Iran, for example, Saudi Arabia or others, who's, you know, even including China, whose interest is something that differs from a third world country or a global south country like Gambia or so, can bring some heated debate in that. But you know, those
the levels are not even the same.
Right. So you see, in those blocks also, there are some politics. And this is what Khadija was talking about. This whole thing, like I said in my opening, is a party-driven process. And it is member states who decides on this. And that's why I'm saying, even going forward with the reforms and everything we are talking about, and of course agreeing with Khadija, but also to be cautioned that if we keep on thinking that these people will come and help us, it's not going to happen.
It's not gonna happen.
Like, we also need to be organized as a continent. And of course, in the past 2-3 years, we've seen how organized the Africa Group of Negotiators was. They've had series of capacity building, series of pre-meetings, you know, and also even in the Africa Climate Summit, the agenda that was carried from the summit to the COP30 was also showing that Africa is now changing in that. This knowledge transfer is something that is very important. Technological transfer is also very important. Like Khadija will tell you, we will not call names of countries here in that regard. But there are countries who will bring experts. For example, one country, this year we counted it bringing 34 lawyers as part of its national delegation. You ask, for example, countries like Gambia, how many environmental lawyers did you go with? It will literally be none, 1 or 2, or even none, or 0. You ask Sierra Leone, how many environmental lawyers are you going? 1, 2, or even none. So now compared to a country its national delegates comprises of 34 lawyers. So you see the difference. And this knowledge now is what now we now need for it to be integrated. And also we cannot be in this way. We must be equal for us to be able to also have what we need to meet somewhere. Because we are in the demanding side. They are in the supply side. So us who are in the demanding side needs to also play our cards in a way that we are going to have our demands realized.
So Khadija, we don't even know where to start. I mean, this is a complex matter. I mean, we go there, we know these are the challenges, these are the issues. But again, like you mentioned, the issue of capacity is there. But on the issue of loss and damage, I understand that there was a pledge initially there was 800 million, but it's only $200 million that was pledged on the loss and damage sector. And again, the minister was saying that they need to draft bankable project proposals to ensure that they attract some of these funds that are pledged. The involvement of young people, how involved are you going to be in this whole process? Because you did mention the issue of capacity, and I want to believe that in order for us to transition or move forward, young people needs to be part and parcel of everything that involves climate change, especially in terms of finance.
Yeah, so with the issue of involving young people, we've been saying it several times. So like, I think that is where, like, within the ELCOI, under the GA, there has been a progress. At least we say, because the Gambia never had a climate change bill. This is the first time that the Gambia is having a climate change bill. And if you look at the climate change bill, at least 20% of the climate change bill has been for the young people. So let's see how progressive that is going to be regarding that. And for the capacity, looking at the ELCOI Gambia, through it, we are able to be within one of our partners called the YOTA. There's an initiative called the National Youth Delegates Program. At least how can we do that to strengthen the capacity of young people? Because like, we have a lot of civil society organizations in the Gambia actually doing a lot in terms of sustainability and supporting the climate action. But how do they also have a meaningful voice into these discussions? Meaning it has to start from the grassroots level. So we have to be doing these trainings, negotiations trainings. And we've moved forward with the government regarding that. We've sent the proposal, the concept note and everything. And the only thing that is remaining is the implementation aspect. And we are not going to stop until we see it happen. Because like, that is where the gap still lies. If the capacity is not strengthened, there's still going to be a huge gap for young people to understand the climate change policies. Because even with these policies, like Babukar was mentioning about the reforms, you also need to understand the policies first before you even talk about how do you want your youth component to be there. So in that way, the training is really important. And we have a lot of Gambian-led negotiators. We have technical experts here. They are really willing to support many young people regarding that. Sometimes these trainings also require some financial capacities. But that is where we are trying to move forward, pushing to ensure that the ministries come like as a bilateral to come and support young people in regarding that. And that way we will have cohort by cohort that will actually even be graduated. Most of us, we have this negotiators training outside the country, not like the Climate Vulnerable Fellowship that I have been in since 2024. It's almost 2 years now. We are heading to the 3rd year for the fellowship program. And it's like an 8 months full year training, but like you have virtual training for almost like 8 months, then you have an in-person training regarding that. And there is also a youth negotiators program that some of the young people are actually in. But if we have it as our national level, at the national entity, by that way you will be able to accumulate many young people in that training, because we already have experts into different domains regarding the climate thematic agenda items. Through that, we will be able to support the next generation of youth negotiators to also be keenly participative when they go to these COP events, not only under the side events, but also draft the text, review them, and even do interventions, because you can only do interventions when you are able to understand what this text or this CMA decisions are actually talking about.
So now, Babukar, what is the way forward? How do we now move? What is the next steps as far as civil society is concerned?
Maybe the next step is like to QTV to give, or Q Group to give Khadija to money for them to start those initiatives of the youth.
We have been doing, I mean, we have been supporting youngsters. All they have to do is to come on board.
So that is one step. So
you know, Q Group has been doing tremendous.
So Q Group now can give money to Khadija with their initiative, and of course they will continue doing the amazing job that they're doing. The other thing that we're just going to emphasize on is the capacity building, because Khadija rightly said it. You see, there is an ICJ ruling on the entire convention and everything, and we've known that the ICJ has even hold the position that, you know, developed countries who has caused this havoc should pay for it. So, but again, like she said, this is a whole knowledge of it, which embodies a lot of things.
Yes.
And then you need to know the policies, you need to know the rules, you need to know the negotiation tech, you need to know the politics, you need to know every other things that are in there. But again, there is something that is coming up in it, and that is these bilateral investment treaties that they are trying to put into these systems, that we as civil society are definitely cautioning our government to say that they need to be careful with such bilateral investment treaties that are coming, because these are things that they are using in this climate space to see how they could cover up the mess. Like, for example, one of our colleagues was jokingly saying that in Kenya there was somebody who was bringing frozen pizza to Kenya in refund of a climate finance study. So you know how funny that is. So they are bringing every other thing, and when these bilateral treaties comes in, we don't know the dangers until we go to the interstate dispute settlements, and then by then we've already lost our marine system, by then we've already lost our rivers, we've already lost our big capital assets. So going forward, we need to have, like Khadija really said, capacity must be there. We must be knowledgeable, understand the process, and also get the people to train and learn these things, so that when they're in this international fora and these big events, they are also able to do that. Lastly and finally, supporting the youth. You see, these youth are the drivers of change, and we have seen how the young people carried this COP. Like, for example, Gambia has been going to COP for so long, but the way that they went to COP 30 this year had never before, because of the involvement of the young people. From the beginning, from the ELCOIs, from the national conferences, from the everything that they've done until the international level. And they're the one who were definitely there, you know, raising the flags of the country high. So it's also important that we groom them, support them, and also, you know, show them the pathway that they're keeping up this momentum to continue doing the great job. So,
Khadija, what is next? As far as next year is Turkey, right?
Yeah, so
COP31.
Yeah, but like COP31, it's later in next year again.
Yes.
So, but like, if you look at the COP process, like I mentioned, it's a continuous process. Before the COP, you have the SBs, that is the subsidiary bodies, and it's going to be the 64th subsidiary bodies. So that alone, it's a huge continuity of the COP30. The process, you've seen that there have been a lot of pledges or adoption of decisions, but decisions are not actually the final outcome of everything. So it has to continue to SBs in June. So that one is a whole lot of technicality than even the COP. Let's say that is where you have most of these technical experts in the SBs trying to draft the text of the decisions of the next COP that is coming to happen. So even the outcome from this COP30, we are from the UAE Belém work program and the Belém road adaptation, Baku to Belém adaptation roadmap. So that is where you even see that the indicators of 59 were actually adopted. So it's a continuous process of where we are actually going to be for the next COP. So prior to that next COP also, there are actually going to be a lot of bilateral meetings, countries to countries, to discuss most of the technical aspects. So all this process has to be sustainable and continuity. And if you miss one gap to another, it's also lack of interest, because like if you don't understand the process, it's going to bring a lot of confusion regarding how does you even have the text. That is why sometimes you'll be confused. How do you get one CMA 0.7 CMP, this or SB 64 or SB 63 outcome? But this were a continuous process from previous COPs or the previous SBs that actually have to continue again to this COP31. So it's actually a way forward, and we anticipate that young people will actually do better as we move forward.
Yes, young people will definitely do better in COP31 in Turkey. I see you all there. Thank you very much, Khadija. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Babukar, for coming to the program. And viewers, this is all we have for you on this edition of the Youth Dialogue, until we come your way next week for another edition and with another young people to talk about another thing. As you know, it's 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. So next week, we are definitely going to talk about that. See you.